you not.
Good things. It's like Christmas morning.
This is Job Praise Whitewater, and I'm your host, Nick Turner, for this celebration of whitewater paddling and the legends who have shaped our sport. Job Praise Whitewater is brought to you by Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine. This magazine is a true work of art. If you've never picked one up before, go to the local shop, find one, and look through, and you will be amazed at what the sport is doing right now. If you want to find out what the latest expeditions are going on all around the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine in the news section. If you want to find out in-depth articles on the latest exploits of the very best paddlers in the world, it's in Kayak Session Magazine. The artwork, the photography is on another level from anything you've ever seen. The founder of Kayak Session Magazine, Toon, Philippe, anyone who's been in the industry very long knows him well and knows that nobody is more true to the sport. So if you want to support the sport, see what all the latest people are doing, and get the very best eye candy available on earth in the sport of whitewater kayaking, then do yourself a favor, go to kayaksession.com and pony up some of those dollars, drink a few less PBRs, and get yourself a subscription. Your buddies will bring beer over to come read the magazine at your house. Kayak Session Magazine, the international whitewater magazine. All right, well, absolutely thrilled today to have with me Dan Gavere, guy who was basically the first person who said, you know, I'm not going to be a slalom kayaker or work for a company. I just want to be a pro kayaker and go around kayaking. And along the way, we're going to help stitch together these regional whitewater festivals into this pro rodeo tour. And what's central to one of the movies that just really changed, one of those movies that just changes a sport, Kavu Day, as well as gear innovations like the AT paddle, and a guy who's lived a full life outside of whitewater as well. So really glad to have you here, Dan. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into kayaking?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. I'm like so stoked to be still doing it, still getting on the water, you know, and feeling healthy and being here. I mean, it's 2025. It's crazy. And just a big shout out to my dad. He got me started. I grew up in Salt Lake City. I was born in Spain. A lot of people don't know that, but I was actually born in Spain. My dad was in the Air Force. And I grew up in Salt Lake. So my dad wanted to ski powder, and my mom wanted to go to the University of Utah and get her PhD. And so I grew up skiing powder. Naturally, didn't know how lucky I was. My dad got me a mountain bike when I was like 13. And at about 9 years old, my mom left, and my dad, to fill the void, threw me in the front of the canoe, and we went camping. We went like down the San Juan, and we went paddling together, and it was awesome. Um, that is until the rapids got gnarly, you know, and he would be like, paddle on the left, and I'd be paddling on the right, and he'd be like, no, the other side, and I'd be like, oh, I'm scared shitless, dude. Like, this sucks, you know? So I was kind of into skateboarding and being a bad boy. I was, you know, growing up in Salt Lake City, kind of in the urban area. And so I kind of started to step away a little bit because I wanted to ride my skateboard and slide rails. I didn't want to be out camping in the woods and stuff like that. But he was like, nope, you're hanging with me and my buddies then, so you don't really have a choice. So there was a couple years there where he drugged me along, and I was like, well, I want to ride my skateboard. He's like, that's fine. You want to throw your skateboard in the canoe? I don't care. You can practice your ollies on the rocks at the campground, like, you know, so that's what I was doing. And you know, that love of just being outside, being on the river, you know, was instilled in me as a little kid. And I didn't know how much I love it, and I didn't have a lot of choice in the matter, but it was a way that my dad and I filled that void and not having my mom in our life anymore. And that was cool, you know, and that was really awesome for us to have that time together back then, you know, and I cherish that. So yeah, Alan Gavere is a mighty, mighty amazing, legendary guy. So I'm lucky to still have him around and tell the stories. But growing up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and then becoming a whitewater paddler basically in high school because I just kind of loved the sport in the summer. In the spring and summer, I felt it was a way to kind of extend my powder season, if you will. And when I was a little kid, my dad got me a dancer, but I didn't know how to roll it. I was really too small to roll. I remember going to a few roll sessions as a little kid and just kind of doing the motions, and the boat just stayed like this. And I just like swam up. Like there was like no outfitting, and then back in the day, there was a place called Sid Sports in Salt Lake City. It was like the OG kayak place. And Sid, he got my boat outfitted. And then, like, yeah, I could kayak, like, okay. I still couldn't roll, but like, I started charging like San Juan, I did. And I only swam once. And then I did a couple other runs, like the Moab Daily. We did a lot because I lived in Salt Lake, and started doing the Mighty Weeb, and and then we did a big adventure out to Glenwood. I think it was in the spring when it was really flooded. It must have been like 83 or 84. The water was really high. We looked at like Upper Death and stuff, and I think I literally peed my pants when we were looking at that rapid. I was like a little teeny kid, and my dad had his open canoe, so he took the canoe that we paddled together, the Old Town Pathfinder, put a cover on it, built it all himself, sewed hula hoops into it. I mean, the spray skirt on the hula hoops, all whole nine. And he made that into a solo boat, got me the dancer, and I was charging in that. And yeah, it was pretty awesome until that day we tried to run Shoshone basically, and I swam like basically all of Shoshone at flood stage. And I thought my dad had died because the last time I saw him, he was going upside down, into one of those huge rapids, and it was like, yeah, it was like big that year. Like, I don't even know what we were thinking. And they were still building that road at that time, that gnarly road next to Glenwood, that the road on top of the highway, they were still building that. So it was all under construction. I remember just like crawling out of that river, like coughing up water. I had no idea where my dad was, like, and these people had like stopped in their cars and ran down and grabbed me and told me my dad was like downstream, and finally we got together and I had lost my paddle, and I don't know, I think we got the boats back and stuff, but I was like, I'll never kayak again. And it wasn't until like a freshman in high school, I had a buddy named Justin. He's like, yeah, it'd be cool to go kayaking, And I was like, well, I got a kayak, a dancer. I should probably jump back in it. It's kind of a long-winded story, but I learned how to roll. And then since then, I started kayaking with my friends and started instead of all the time just my father. And then like kayaking became like this obsession. And I was in high school and I was like, oh, it was fun. Yeah, it was really fun. And I was trying to figure out a way to get better at kayaking, but I didn't really have any money. I even really remember trying to figure out if there was any kayak schools or like kayak academies or a way that I could like not go to school and go kayaking, or like go to kayak school or like make school into kayaking, you know? And all there was Otter Bar. I remember like seeing in the magazines at the end, I'm like, Dad, look, this is a kayak school, And so he like calls him up. He's like, yeah, I got this crazy kid. He wants to go to kayak school. It says you're a kayak school. I'm like, no, not like that. So, we were low budget, and I remember that trip. We were like on a 10-day Colorado trip in a Volkswagen Bug that my dad had, literally with the solo canoe on the top and my dancers snuggled up against it. And yeah, he taught me how to do the trucker's hitch, and we had the old school dry bags with the fold tops, and it was all maps and figuring all that stuff out. It was awesome. Yeah, it was like, I feel so blessed to have learned how to paddle when I did, because it was the exploratory part of it was it was more tactile, it was more just something that you just couldn't get the beta on it. So it was just more you just heard about this run, you showed up and you put on and you just discovered it on your own. And I think there was a lot of me discovering life by the seat of my kayak, during high school and stuff like that. And I'm just really, really fortunate to have the life I've had and the privilege I've had really to have been able to paddle all over the world with some amazing people and still be around to tell stories about it and really cherish it.
Yeah, and when you were in Salt Lake, you're hanging out at Sid Sports and also, I imagine, Salty Peaks as well. Both pretty
Yeah,
legendary shops that really shaped those sports.
absolutely. Salty Peaks was legendary. Dennis and Drew that started that shop. I remember that the first couple weeks they started it. I was in there just jaw dropped. Like I was like, this is a dream. This is so cool. And I must have been like a junior or senior at that time in high school. So I was fully in deep with kayaking and snowboarding at that point, and we were riding probably 30, 40 days a year just backcountry snowboarding. They didn't allow the snowboards at any of the ski areas because they were all like, no, you guys like fall and your boards go, skittering down the hill and run into someone and kill them. So we were hiking Cardiff and Grizzly Gulch and all that stuff and just like boot packing up or snowshoes. Yeah, it was sick. I just loved just riding my winter stick, or I still have my old Burton and stuff that I learned on. It was awesome. And and I think a lot of that snowboarding really crossed over into my kayaking because I looked at kayaking and I looked at the people who were really doing it. What I wanted to do was my dream was to be a pro kayaker. Ever since I was like before I could drive for sure, like 15, 16, where I was like, I think I went to one of the first Idaho rodeos, on the Payette, and I saw like Rob Lesser and like Bob McDougal, you know, Doug Ammons, Grant Amaral, Mark White. I mean, some of the OG badass motherfuckers. Like, dude, those guys were so gnarly, dude. Fucking running like the North Fork and shit. Like, I mean, I was a little kid, like this was a long time ago. They were badass. Like Grant and that whole crew, Tony Brennan, he ran with those guys. He was kind of my age, but he was a little younger. But I mean, Rob Lesser and those guys in Boise. Sorry, I just had some ice on my ankles. Just taking that off. Um, they're just awesome. Yeah, I mean, just that's who I was looking up to, and I remember going to that event and just I was like, I want to be a pro kayaker. And then looking at the kayakers that were out there, they're career kayakers. They were kind of like slalom paddlers usually. They were like the ones that were like gunning for the U.S. team. So I was like, oh, like what's like what are those guys doing? Like Eric Jackson and those guys. And I was like, that looks like that looks like rough times. Like they're like scrapping and then they have to like move to DC and train in Bethesda and all these like fragile boats that cost a fortune. It's like I want to do freestyle. I want to be like the metal militia of kayaking. Like I want to be like fucking, like Damian Sanders of kayaking. Like I want to be a career kayaker, but I don't want to be in the Olympics. I want to like have fun. And like I was about adrenaline and I had a hard time just, after the day was done, like turning the switch off. Like I wanted to also party all night long too. I was, like took a shower. Now what are we doing for the next 10 hours, So I loved thinking of that lifestyle and what I could do and all that. And then I went to college. I went to college in Montana. It was literally like a flip of a coin, Nick. I applied to a bunch of colleges. I got a little scholarship from the Rotary Club of Utah, and I was very, very fortunate to have my mom, who really put up some money for my education as well. So I had some choices, and it was like came down to Humboldt State or U of M, and I hadn't been to either place ever in my life. And I looked at them on the atlas. I'm like, okay, well, here's cool. Well, like Humboldt State's by the ocean. That'd be cool. Like I didn't know the ocean that much. I was from Salt Lake. I was like, that'd be sick. Oh, look, there's a Cal Salmon, like in kayak there. That sounds pretty sweet. Like I knew that was kind of like where Otter Bar was kind of over there. Like the kayaking's got to be good, like that was about as much as I knew. And then Montana was like, oh, the snowboarding has just got to be so sick. It's like Missoula's just going to be so sick. It's going to be so fun. And so I was just like, flipped a coin. Heads, it's Montana. Tails, it's Cali, and there it goes. I'm Montana. So like literally packed up my Saab turbo with my kayak, my mountain bike, threw my snowboard shit in there, and headed off to college solo. And first week in Missoula, I went up and bought a pass at Snowbowl. So I'm like, I'm getting a season's pass at the local mountain, which was Montana's Snowbowl. And I get up there and I'm like, it was the scariest looking chairlift I've ever seen. The thing looks like it was built in like 1820. Like goes up and like goes over the first ridge, and then it bridges this whole valley where you're like 300 feet above the ground. It's terrifying. It's like one of those chairlifts that just sticks out of the wire too. It's like threaded in there. It doesn't sit on. I'm like, from Utah, like I've been on like the tram, a lot of ski lifts. But anyways, the second lift up, I meet a guy, he gets on the chairlift with me because I'm riding solo. And he's a student at the University of Montana, and he's studying business. And he's like, oh man, he's complaining. There's like 5 snowboarders on the hill, so I'm all stoked because he's on a snowboard. His name's Zach, and we're clanking boards because he's goofy and I'm regular, and we sat on the wrong side, so our boards are fucking, it's so annoying when you don't have that figured out, right? So we're like figuring that out, and then he's like, man, I was looking for some parts for my binding, and they don't have it here, and the only place that has like snowboard parts is like the Army Navy. And I'm like, yeah, this town could use like a snowboard shop like Salty Peaks, He's like, what's Salty Peaks? And I was telling him all about it. He's like, yeah, that'd be dope. I was like, let's do it, dude. Let's do it. He's like, yeah, we should do it. And by the time we got to the top of that chairlift, we had shaken, and we're like, we're starting a snowboard shop in Montana, dude. And he's like, what do we call it? I was like, I don't know. How about just Board of Missoula? Like, we're going to have boards, and we're in Missoula, and we're just like, fucking Board of Missoula, dude. And he's like, let's do it. And Zach Spanigal and I shook right there, and yeah, and that's how Board of Missoula started. And it's still going to this day. So that's pretty cool. And that was a shop dedicated to snowboarding, in Montana's first snowboard shop, as far as I know. And yeah, it was pretty neat. I went to the 30-year anniversary a few years back, hung out with Chris and those guys. So I guess, running a snowboard shop, going to college in Montana, and I had this kayaking dream and this snowboarding dream, and it kind of melded in this lifestyle that I created because I was just determined to figure out a way to make it happen. And back then I didn't have anyone to show me or a role model. I wasn't living with my parents or anything. I was just out there just running my snowboard shop, and just, I had my buddy to bounce ideas off of, but he was my snowboard partner. He didn't really kayak or anything, you know. He was a cowboy from eastern Montana, like to do kick flips and cowboy boots and drink handles of Maker's Mark and smoke Camel unfiltered cigarettes, you know. Like we went hard in Missoula in college, and um he brought like that eastern part of Montana to it. And I was trying to be a pro kayaker. You know, I knew this snowboard shop was cool, but it wasn't where I was going to be. You know, like this was just like a rung in the step of the ladder for me to get to this kayaking dream that I had. And we were just watching videos in the snowboard shop, just all day long videos, just all day long. Just, we had a couch, we had, it was a cool place to hang, you know? And so people would come in. We just watch videos of like crusty demons of dirt. We'd watch like all the like rad skateboard videos, like shit, and like all the rad cool stuff, you know, that was going on back then. It was all VHS tapes. So I had that whole influence, and I'm like, I want to do like what Craig Kelly's doing, like what Damian Sanders and Sean Palmer and those guys are like so badass in snowboarding. And I was getting to the level now where I was starting to get some parts and some videos, and I was like starting to film with this guy named Robbie Lindsay, who did some like OG grassroots snowboard films. And I got a couple good opportunities through my sponsors with Nitro and Smith, and went on 4 or 5 heli shoots, and things were starting to happen in the snowboard realm. And I knew this guy Robbie, and he had this thing kind of going with snowboard films, but he was nowhere near what, like, you know, the big film productions were doing. But we did some cool stuff, you know, and I got to ride with like Rob Kingwell and Kingman and Tex and like some of the badass like OG extreme snowboarders back in the day. So I got to feel that lifestyle, you know, like I wasn't getting checks to snowboard, but these guys were, you know, and we were like riding in the helis and like staying at the nice places and going on cat trips. And I was like, I want to do this with kayaking. Like, there's gotta be a way. So I asked him, you know, I straight up was just like asking all these pro guys, like, how do you get together? Like, how does it work? Like, you know, and he's like, well, you got to get together with like someone who can like make videos and films. And so I was like, dove deep dive, like got a nice Canon camera, you know, started taking pictures. I was already like shooting some, and I had been video kayaking quite a bit at that point. So I was pretty adept at my way around video, um, getting the video, but not editing and stuff. And so that's when I really got to know Robbie Lindsay, and he helped, you know, teach me how to edit and stuff like that. And then those were just early days with I mean, that just leads right into Paddle Quest and making the US team in 93 and all that stuff going on, where I was on Team Perception and then went on to Team Dagger briefly and then went straight to Team Preon. And there was a lot of stuff going on. But that was exciting times, yeah, in the early 90s there, and I was in Missoula. Yeah, it was good times.
And I guess about then you come across Brennan Guth in Missoula, and you guys start kayaking
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, I came into Missoula pretty hot for kayaking. So it wasn't long before I started to meet some of the local paddlers and the people who knew what was up around there, and started asking questions on, you know, where else can I paddle? You know, like I know the Alberton Gorge is good. You know, I've been like logged about 10,000 hours on Fang Rapids, you know, surfing, learning how to back surf a Corsica S at Fang, you know, and triple bridges and all that stuff. And and then going up to the Locksaw a lot, you know. I was paddling a little bit with a bunch of people around there, but Brennan Guth and I became really good friends. Yeah, we started paddling a lot together, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's really neat what they've done with Brennan's Wave, and everything there. It's really cool.
And so then, how did kind of you and Barry hook up to make Kavu Day? You know, Barry just made such a huge impact on the sport by just being such a cool guy. But how did that all come together?
Yeah, Kavu Day was another interesting story, and it was a bit of an offshoot from Paddle Quest. So we, after doing a few different films, Robbie, Lindsay, and I in Montana.
And so that was Paddle Frenzy you made with Rob,
Yeah,
and you had
exactly.
Corran out there.
Yeah, so kind of to backstep a little bit, Robbie and I did one last snowboard flick together, and it sucked. It was shit. I was like, dude, we're not gonna do what these guys are doing. They get like $1 million budget. I mean, they're like rolling everything 16 mil. They got 10 Aries. They got like, and TGR kind of, level. And and I was like, let's do a kayak flick. Cause look at the kayak flicks. I mean, we got like Southern Fried Creeking, dude. Like tilted camera angles, it was sick kayaking. Like I was so stoked to actually see the kayaking in it. But just the video production was lacking, and the narration and just like the fun story and let's tell some like the characters. And I'm like watching these like cool flicks in my snowboard shop all day. So I was like, Robbie, we gotta do something like this for kayaking. Like, I know we can do it. Like, the formula's right there. So we wrote up the whole. Well, we basically just, I was like, dude, I'll just, whatever it takes, I'll just pay for it. If you can pay your way, I'll pay my way. And like, hopefully I can just snag a bro kayaker and we can just do a sick road trip through like Montana and Idaho. And I know some runs that are super dope. And you can just, because Robbie is like, he's a big dude and he doesn't kayak and he doesn't get near the water, So, he was filming everything on the sticks from shore. We shot everything on 16 mil and everything. But so, yeah, I went to the world's, or I went to the US team trials in Oregon, and I had to work on Friday night, and like they started on Saturday morning, so I left Missoula like no speed limits, just I drove that Forerunner, matted as fast as the thing would go everywhere I went, and so I got to Oregon in the morning, drove straight up the Clackamas. I'd never been here or there, and I got a ticket on the way in the morning, and I still made it right in time for the rodeo prelims, and I did really well. Yeah, I did really well, and I ended up making the U.S. team like right there. Like I tied with Chris Spelius, who was like, he's doing some spins and throwing the peace signs and doing the paddle twirls, and he had the streamers on his helmet and the whole 9 yards, and I was in there like trying to throw like technical vertical kayaking freestyle, like we were pretty much like over the performative stuff and into the technical, moves at that point, like the badass, flips and spins and everything. And that's where I met Corran, and Corran and I hit it off. Like he was a punk. He had a big mohawk, he was like had a funny accent, no one could understand him, and he's dropping f-bombs everywhere, and he wasn't like a big partier, but he could hang at the party with all of us, and he was just so fun and so smart about just everything, and I was just like, I like this guy. And I was just like, dude, do you want to go on like a kayak adventure with me for like a freaking month, and like I'll pay for as much as I can and just get in my Forerunner and we're just gonna go kayak the shit, dude. And he's like, yeah, for sure, but you gotta think about paddling a hurricane. He's like, the boat you're in is it's awesome because I actually designed it. It was a Corsica S, which was the last boat that he designed subsequently for Bill Masters at Perception before he left. But he's like the hurricane's it, and he was really a huge, influence and a great friend, and still is, and a huge influence in my career. So I definitely have to send a big shout out to him. So he was like, "Yeah, man," and he jumped in my Forerunner. We went on like a 3 week kayaking mission. I went straight to Missoula, called Robbie, and was like, "Dude, I got the bro. He's got a mohawk. I'm like literally ironing it right now, and like it's like a foot tall, and he's like one of the best kayakers ever. And like we're gonna go run like Coyote Falls, and like I had all this stuff. I was like, it's gonna be awesome, And that's how we made Paddle Frenzy.
Yeah, that paddle frenzy, that really was the tectonic shift from Southern Fried Creekin' and whatever had been made before, right? That one, I watched it at least 200 times, probably 300.
Yeah, I did too, for sure. It was a lot of fun to make, and it was really raw. That was like a raw edit with like music, and just I still love that film. Yeah, it really was a lot of fun to make. So being able to do that with Corran was a lot of fun. So and some of those runs have become kind of classics. That Coyote Falls run is like such a classic. It's just a little deeper, farther back, but it's so beautiful back there, just classic. So, anyways, uh, we did a lot with Robbie and Corran and I, and then that led to a bigger production. Like we wanted to do like, let's go around the world. Like let's do it like big time. And then we scored the deal with Timex, which was a pretty big hook. And first thing we did was reached out to Tommy Moe, who had just won a gold medal in skiing, gold and silver. And he said he would go to Chile with us. Reached out to Dean Cummins, who had just won the World Extreme Championships in skiing. And he was like, well, hell yeah, I'll go. And I had Robbie, get it all set up. I rented a Super 8 film camera. We are going to do the whole thing. We were getting music from Blind Melon. We were looking at some other awesome, like, music options. We actually had a budget to, like, buy music tracks and stuff. So yeah, so that was Paddle Quest, and that was a stressful journey. That was like 3 weeks locked up in an editing room, um, looking over a guy's shoulder, and then having to kind of take on the whole project myself with a pretty gnarly deadline. And so I had to learn how to edit well very quickly, and that was a stressful time. But we debuted that at Outdoor Retailer to a standing crowd, and that was the last year that they had Outdoor Retailer in Reno before it went to Salt Lake City. And all the brass was there from Timex and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty sick. We went hard that night. Yeah, it was big. Everyone was super stoked on what they saw, and yeah, we had like pulled off a pretty awesome mission by doing all that filming in Chile, and then Alaska, and then all the filming we'd done in Montana and Idaho, and we put it all together and had some super, super dope editing with the like intro, and I was kind of butthurt, because I was like put all this time into the video, but I wasn't like really getting anything out of it, like there was a lot of money that went down, and we had burned through a lot of cash, like going everywhere. And so I was like, okay, fine. I'm just gonna have to like make myself look good in the video, I guess, and I was like, this is gonna be kind of my stepping stone that I designed to also get me to where I want to be in my career, because we didn't have social media back then. So for me, like looking back at it, like a little bit selfishly, Paddle Quest, was my Facebook, was my Instagram back then. And I, really knew that I needed to use that to propel my career into what I ideally wanted it to be. And it was perfect. Like it was like perfect. And what happened was I had filmed in Europe. I had gone to Europe and filmed this whole section. It's like 30 or 40 rolls of film on high eight. And when I flew back, they I got bumped off my flight or something, but my bag left and I had thrown my camera and all the film in this giant HF dry bag that Horst Verzettel had given me in Germany. Giant thing, like 2,000 liter dry bag. And I threw the camera, all my wet kayak gear, and just rolled it up, and I never saw the bag again. I like got to Montana and they're like, your bag is gone. Like we have zero. And I was like, that had all the film, the whole Europe segment for Paddle Quest was gone. So I had to edit the whole thing without that. It was like having twins and then one of them died. Like I was just crushed, but we got Paddle Quest out and the whole thing happened. And then literally, Nick, like 8 months later, I come home and the bag is sitting on my porch. And I had moved. So I have no idea how they even had figured out. So there's the bag. Everything was in it. All the film, everything. Just how I had left it. Albeit a bit moldy. Sent the film off, got exposed. It was killer. And we had all that film. So I had met Barry a few times from Kavu, and so I called up Barry and I was like, we have the lost files from Paddle Quest, I want to do a film, I'd love to do something. Let's like collaborate. I think, I love like what he was doing and everything. And I think we had paddled together or something, but we just like hit it off. And he's like, yeah, if you ever have a good idea, run it past me. And I just like called him and he's like, yeah, let's do it, and at that point I was paddling with Brennan and things were rolling with Preon, and we were getting after it and we were having a good time kayaking, and we were going to make this film with Kavu, and I wanted to make a theme for the film instead of just making kayak porn. I was like, we can make another, it's easy, just music, action. But, it was like, I wanted to like have a story. Like I wanted to like have some continuity, I wanted to like bring out some backstory a little bit. Anyways, I was like, Kavu Day. Like Kavu Day, that's what it's all about. Clear above visibility, like the perfect day. Like, what is your perfect dream day of kayaking? It's not just like sending like the biggest waterfall. It's not just like kayaking the biggest rapids of your life. But it's like having fun with your friends and like you're at the campground and you're riding skateboards and you're like jumping the fire pit on your clapped out moped, like, the old RC cars that we like, I'd like set up like a line of Barbies and smash through them. We did all kinds of dumb stuff like when we were off the river. So I was like, I want to see all that, but we needed to tell a story. So Kavu Day was like kind of hard for people to understand. It was an acronym and all that stuff. So I was like, Scrabble. Scrabble would be perfect. So we're like playing Scrabble, and then we can literally start the movie with the Scrabble move, and then it can be explained, and then it will just be laid out for the whole thing. And then that's where we came up with the Scrabble thing, and we went and bought the Scrabble board, and we were up in Big Fork, Montana, and we filmed that opening shot with Brennan Guth with the Scrabble board, where he's like, what's Kavu Day or whatever. And that's what I remember Brennan so well for, and that was like a one take, it was like perfect the first time. We're just like, okay, let's just keep rolling, and it was awesome. I remember the next day, Brennan Guth just sent it in the Wild Mile race. He went straight over the falls there and tried to run the right line, but we were we were racing the downriver race, so we took sea kayaks. Oh, and I don't think I had ever seen anyone piton so violently in my life, you know. And there was like 300 people watching on the shore. Yeah, and he flew like right out of that kayak. Yeah, it was crazy. But Brennan was quite the whitewater icon in Montana, you know, and he was an amazing guy.
Yeah, that now that you mention it, that paddle quest that did kind of set that template for travel to all these places in the world, and make a movie out of it. Because that hadn't been, there had been a trip by trip documentary style thing, but not just let's go all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point on that storytelling behind Kavu Day. I hadn't thought about that much, but it really that did make the impact a lot more. That it told that story, and it's hard to do. Not many movies have done that even since.
Yeah, I think, I had had a lot of experience at that point, and Paddle Quest taught me a big lesson because that was, I thought, a good story that we told, and we had, you know, planned that out and designed that. Um, but I wanted to keep doing that, and I was hoping to also at that time, by the time we were doing Kavu Day, some of the younger paddlers were coming out and they were starting to make movies too, and and I was like, hey, this is your blueprint, man. Like this is people all the time would come up to me. I mean, I had Teo Berman come up to me and be like, how do I become a pro kayaker like you, like at one point, I was like, the blueprint is right there, you don't need to win rodeos and win races or go to the Olympics in kayaking to make a career out of it. You gotta get people into the sport. You gotta get new eyeballs on the sport. You have to make something that's so rad that it gets out of your vacuum, it gets out of the vacuum. Like we're all breathing the same air kind of when you get in the sport, and you're in that deep. But like when you make something that can like impact people outside of the sport, then that's cool. Like maybe every 10th one becomes kayaker, like that's awesome. Like that's awesome too. And after a while, that kind of became more my mission, it's like I want more people to see me kayaking. Like, how do I get in Outside Magazine? I wanted more people to see kayaking.
Well, if that was your mission, it worked with us because you gave us. It was one of those first like Locksaw rodeos. I don't know if it was senior in
Yeah.
high school maybe, and yeah, you handed us a copy of Kavu Day, and then
Awesome.
watched it 300 times. Would
That's
take
awesome.
girls home from the bar, and then sit on the couch and watch Kavu Day, and it's like, what is wrong with you guys? But soon enough, we're making our own. We made this one called Send Your Kind. That was yeah,
Nice.
just went
Dude,
from
and it
there.
was it was so awesome watching what you were doing and like I was so stoked like on what you were doing because you were from Montana, like I wasn't in Montana long, but I was there long enough to like be like feel that connection, like and then I don't know if it was you that showed me Big Timber my first time that I went down it, like I don't remember if I was on it with you. I just remember having to wheeled out some guy that broke both his ankles in the first drop. We like it was a long day, but yeah, it was just that connection with Montana was just really strong, still is, and it was cool to see what you were doing. And then the next generation of kayakers started coming up, with like Teo and Josh, and they were doing cool stuff with Jock and stuff like that. And I was like, yep, these guys are gonna do it. But there was like the whole competition side of it too that we were really pushing. I mean, I wanted to go to all the kayak freestyle events. I mean, outside of the movie making, there was like this whole other side. It was like I want to like go to these events and do a tour and like have a team and like go and yeah, do good for Dan Gavere in the rodeo, but like I want to like have a team with my bros and be like, yeah, like we're on like team, and then I was paddling for Prion, and then I went to Eskimo for a little while. And we were paddling Eskimo and the Topolino, and the Prion just wasn't really advancing their freestyle design, so moved over to Eskimo, which is kind of an easy shift over there because they were both German. And then EJ's like, dude, you gotta fly out to DC and try out this wave sport boat. This wave sport boat's pretty sick. The Kinetic, I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I like my kendo. I like my kendo. I just went to the Worlds in it, and I placed, I don't even know, I was like top 10, in the ice canal. And anyways, I went there. The first thing he did is take me to like this little cartwheel spot, and it was like 15-point cartwheel. I was like, okay, I love it. It's awesome. And he's like, okay, you're on Team Wave Sport. Okay, we're like a team, dude. Let's do a team. And I was like, yes, a team, like a team, because just there was no team back then, like we wanted to be part of something. And and EJ was very instrumental, and he was like, this guy Chan Zwanzig, he owns Wave Sport, and he wants to create a team. He wants to create like something really cool and something really iconic, and like let's do it. And I want to design these really cool kayaks. And I was like, that sounds awesome, dude. I want a twin tip kayak. Like I ride a twin tip snowboard. Why don't I want a twin tip kayak? I just told him straight up. He's like, yeah, let's start working on that. And that's when we literally started working on the X. I mean, I wasn't working on it, but I was definitely feeding him ideas from my snowboard mindset, like this is what we want to do. We're doing cartwheels, start frontwards, backwards spins, and splats, and just all the like rock 360s, like we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It was so fun. Like we were inventing moves all the time, didn't even know it. Like rock slides, rock spins off everything, trying to flip off of rocks. Like it was awesome. And we were like babysitting Dane and EJ, so Christine or sorry, Dane and Emily, so Christine and EJ could go on a date, and we were all just like going to these rodeos, and we were all living in our vans and sleeping in the back of trucks. And I was like, God, this is dirty living, like it'd be sick, like just have a motorhome, So I like got that old 1973 motorhome, and it was so gross. It was painted all brown. So the first thing I did was paint it red, white, and blue. And then took a couple pictures of it and wrote up a proposal and sent it to Adam Druckmann at Teva, and was like, hey, I was like, put Teva all over the side of this motorhome, and I'll drive it all over the US to all the rodeos, and it'll be awesome. And it'll look like you guys paid for this big team. Like we're a factory team. Like look at these motocross guys. Like they show up like KTM and Honda, and they like show up and they're like a team. They got like matching stuff and all. I was like, I want to do that. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. So it was cool. So I wanted to be a part of that too. And that was where we kind of created that whole rodeo freestyle lifestyle and kind of tied it together with filming during the week and running the gnarly stuff, and then like go to the events on the weekends. And it was awesome. It was just, I mean, you couldn't recreate. Is such an awesome time in kayaking. I mean, we're so lucky to have it. And then that doesn't even
Yeah, that
include all the other
team.
stuff we were doing with AT paddles and all other kind of stuff. So I mean, I had a lot of stuff going on at that point. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, that team. I mean, that really did elevate the whole sport to that golden era. Right after the X came out, and it was just such a tectonic shift of a boat. All of a sudden these spins are
Yeah.
doing for everyone, and then not only that, but you Chan and that whole wave sport team. You really did just take it to the next level. Eric Southwick, Chris
Yeah.
Emmerich, Anya, Erica, and Nikki Kelly. I mean, that was just such a
All of them.
legendary.
Yeah, I was hanging with Chris Amrick a lot at that point. We did 3 summers together, the whole rodeo tour, and we're riding our mountain bikes every day, and we rode thousands of miles. I mean, we mountain biked more than we kayaked those years, and we kayaked like 300 days a year. And that's when we did Dashboard Burrito, or he did Dashboard Burrito. Luckily, I got to be a part of that, and that was really cool. And him and I um, actually started a little video production together after that, and we did some other stuff in the stand-up paddle world. But yeah, those were the days. We really had a lot of fun. So the late 80s all the way up into like the early 2000s were really, I feel like, the golden era for kayaking. It was really when kayaking was like mainstream for a little bit. Freestyle was like an easy entry point. It was a softer entry point that didn't scare people. And it wasn't portrayed in the media as much as just a full send, just huck your meat for the Red Bull shot. And it was a little different back then. And it was coming right off the heels of when windsurfing was really popular. And windsurfing kind of had a similar kind of meteoric rise and then crash as well. So you could probably draw a lot of parallels, but I'm very fortunate, and I'm very grateful to anyone who helped me along the way, and everyone. There's just been hundreds of people, and I still meet people every day, Nick, that come up to me and be like, "Hey, Dan, I remember watching Paddle Quest, like I wore out the tape. Like I wore out the VHS tape, literally unscrewed it and taped it back together." I mean, I've had people tell me that story like 10 times. So it's really neat. So yeah, and that's when I was like, I gotta have something besides just Dan Gavere, because my name is like whatever, it's nothing special. So I was like, we gotta bring in an icon. So that's when I introduced back in the day, you know. And
Brown
yeah,
Star,
he's made a few guest appearances, and
the Brown
yeah, yeah,
Star. Oh,
I
damn.
may have to
You
bring him
got
back.
it.
Yeah, so yeah, he may make a resurgence somehow. But
All the brown claw kids, they don't realize it came
yeah,
from.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's set the stage for maybe some of the claw. Who knows? But yeah, what kayaking is now, it's just unbelievable. And to see, like, people like Dane, and it's just unreal, and it's really cool to see, and it's really neat to see around here where I live, just how paddling is just, it's just in the community. It's freaking awesome, and I love it, and I still love it. I don't kayak as a ton, but I still get out on the river a lot, and now I like to really stand up paddle on the Whitewater. That's like super fun for me. So I've been doing that a lot over the last 10 years, and yeah, I'm sure I've logged quite a few runs on my stand-up paddleboard now that probably rival my kayak days. So yeah, I still get a kick out of feeling the chark, feeling the G's in the turns, dude. Like that's what my life is all about. I'm on this like quest to feel a G out, either on my mountain bike, in the powder, on my foil board, or just carving into an eddy, with my paddleboard. Like it feels so good, and I still love that feeling. So yeah, man, I'm getting on, but I'm still G'ing out as much as I can, and having fun, and in the outdoors, and loving nature.
Yeah, it's all about those G's. If you use nature's forces to go fast and catch air, it's a fun sport.
It is, yeah, and yeah, I didn't know that my whitewater career would spawn into, actually riding a board down the river, but I feel like I probably should have discovered stand-up paddling a long time ago. And it finally just kind of landed in my lap. But for sure, the first time I got on a stand-up paddleboard and took a stroke, I was like, I have to try this in the river. Like I have to catch a wave. I have to like do an eddy turn. It'd be so sick to just like rip out of a strong, sharp eddy on this board and just
Skateboard the
just
river.
yeah, just G out right there. Yeah, like, and I still love that feeling. I mean, you do it all the time on the lower white salmon. It's just easy peasy, splishy splashy class two, you know? So, oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. So,
Mighty Weed is good for it too. That was my first. It was one of those first
yeah,
trade shows when all the Hawaiians started showing up with the
yeah,
paddle boards and got a couple and went out to the Weeb the next day and I was like, it's exactly what you're saying, that feeling. I was like, I'm like skating the river. This is
yeah,
sick.
it is. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, I mean, just looking back, it's just amazing times, and we used those videos as our social media. We used our cameras and trying to get photos in the magazines as much as possible because I would leverage my sponsors for if I was like got a cover of a magazine, I was like straight up, you can read Teva across my helmet. That's $1,000, please. You can't buy that kind of advertising. So we were also, trying to set up those killer photos, and just that was tough back then. It was film, you had to like take the picture and then just hope to God that you nailed it because you didn't get to see it for like weeks. And then even then it was like this little slide, it's on a light table, you don't get to yeah, you don't get to just instantly look at it and then just like, oh, that looks crappy. We better just redo it or don't worry about it because we can just fix it later anyways. But um, it was neat living in that analog era, that like non-screen influenced era where we didn't have what we have now, which makes some of what we did back then quite a bit different, just the whole experience. Not better or worse, just different. I mean, I think it was better back then, for sure. But I'm highly opinionated, so
Well, it's interesting now. I feel like for the kids, yeah, it's almost like there's less gatekeepers, right? Like back in the day, you had to go convince
true,
somebody like a Chen or a
true.
Barry or whoever, or now these people like the sickos or any of these group of friends, can just start filming whatever the hell they're doing,
Yeah,
and if
yeah,
and just be themselves and like you kind of can even also get outside of the sport of kayaking, and just be
absolutely.
into mainstream. So it kind of feels like it gives a lot more power just right back to the group or the person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I was just so committed personally to just writing my story back then, which was just the Gavere way. And it was tough, it wasn't all easy. I didn't have um, a dad who was just like, you know, you can just go to kayak academy, you know. I was like, peace out. Salt Lake sucks, bro. I'm out. Like I was like, I'm good on the powder, but like I want to kayak, so like Salt Lake is not it. So, I was like, I need to be in Colorado, Idaho, West Virginia, or California. Like those were the only options. Like I already knew. Like I knew enough. And I had actually spent a few falls out in West Virginia because I convinced my dad that like video kayaking was what I was going to do in the summer when I was in high school. So he actually let me go to West Virginia when I was between my junior and senior year and live in my Toyota Corolla for the whole summer behind the raft company. And I lived with Brian Good behind at his place. Like, we kayaked every day and just video kayaked, and it was great. And I learned the upper golly, and to this day, the upper golly and the Lochsaw have got to be my favorite runs ever, for sure. You know, and I've kayaked around quite a bit, and for sure those two rivers hold a real special place in my heart, and mostly because I've probably run them each so many times that I feel like I know them more intimately than any other river that I've done. So, um, those are two rivers that I also have to send a big shout out because they made me the kind of paddler I became because I loved them. I've never had a bad day on either of those rivers.
The Lochsa was my, I think, the first big pilgrimage out of, I think,
Yeah,
maybe junior in high school. Just borrowed the parents' car and drove up. Actually
really?
crashed, like
No
almost went
way.
in the river. Was driving by, it gets into the cliffs, and all of a sudden, Soup was like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Whoa!" And shit, and skidded, and like ended up hanging out over the river.
Oh my God.
But one thing Corn said about that golden era that was kind of interesting. That also kind of ties into the other one sports you've really gotten into. Is like it's like if you had the new gear like the Expo for sure, you were better than the pros were 2 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was this explosion, right? I mean, you get an Expo, and all of a sudden, like you would have like made the team last year pretty much from having an Expo this year as the average paddler. So it's like really cool when sports are going through big growths like that.
Yeah, I think we were just lucky that we were in that era where the level we were pushing was always just pushing the level higher, but we were integrated into the innovation of the stuff too because we were like Corn and I were like paddles suck. Like these straight shafts suck. Like my wrists hurt. Like we were doing cartwheels in prions for years, like 10 foot 2 inches, 40-pound boats that were usually had 5 gallons of water in them anyways. And like our wrists were falling apart. Like we were like, so we were like trying those slalom paddles that they had, the bench shaft ones, but Corn's like, wait, the bend on this side's like different than the bend on that side. And I was like, shouldn't it be symmetrical? Because like we're not asymmetrical. We feather and twist, but when you pull through the power phase of the stroke, you're symmetrical. But yeah, he's like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, we gotta design a paddle. These suck. So we literally bought like the bent parts of the shaft from Prion, or no, I don't remember, from Perception, and then we got some blades from somewhere else, and we glued up all our own paddles. I still have mine. I still have my custom paddle that I glued up with Corran, that I used in the 93 Worlds. Yeah, it's freaking dope. Yeah, I still have it. And we glued those up like with the exact angles that the AT eventually became 10 years later. And so after coming to the gorge and then through all those kayak movies and traveling and coming for the gorge games and all these other things, I met up with this guy named Dirk Steinauer, um, who came from the windsurf industry, and he worked with this company called Dynafiber that learned how to like weave the carbon in Kevlar instead of braiding it. They had this machine that would weave it, and so they could change the flex profile and the diameter, and they like had all this like super tech like RTM resin transfer molding and crypt stuff. And he's like, I want to build like the sickest kayak paddle ever built. And Corn and I were like, well, we need the sickest kayak paddle ever built because everything out there just totally sucks. And so we got with him and hundreds of paddles. I mean, we would get like half a dozen paddles and just snap them, all the time. Like I had someone ask me like, "Oh, I was at the dentist the other day." He was like, "Have you cut your lip a lot?" And I was like, "Oh, only on paddles." It's like I probably put my face through like a dozen ATs alone. And so we came up with the ATX, and that was the first paddle we did. It had these massive blades, but it had that one piece RTM resin transfer molded one piece shaft and blade. So the only connection point for a bent shaft paddle was in the middle. So it was the first paddle that was ever built as a modular piece. So you could just change the twist. It was a two-piece deal. And that thing was pretty sick, but we needed to refine the blade, and we knew that we also wanted the area where you grabbed onto to be like a pistol, like a pistol changes diameter in your hand, because when you look at your hand, the diameter at the back of your hand's way bigger than between your thumb and your forefinger. We're like, dude, your paddle needs to be like when I sleep, my hand is like this. Like, so I want to paddle with my hand like that, so it's all relaxed, you know? And then we came up with the pistol grip for the AT2. And I mean, it didn't take a lot of different iterations, because Dirk Steinauer, it was such a genius. Him and JD Davies, who started AT Paddles. JD Davies, he lives here in the Gorge, and Dirk moved to Colorado. But yeah, those guys are the mad scientists, and they like made it happen. And they worked with a company called LP Composites here in the Gorge. And yeah, they made AT paddles forever. I mean, we did AT paddles, and then I helped them get distribution. And then the whole industry went through everything it did. And then it kind of crashed, after 9/11, the whole kayak industry kind of just imploded, and like the sponsorships dried up. Like I had to send my Chevy truck back, I was like, oh shit, I better like go to plan B. Like it's time to like get a real job, like move, like figure out where I'm going to live, all this stuff. I've just been on the road, So I'm like, okay, Hood River, that's where I'm going. And yeah, it was crazy. So we had one last trade show with AT before before Confluence. Well, yeah, I think it was Confluence bottom. And so every year at the trade show, we're like, we want to win booth of the year. So one year we all dressed up like basketball players, and we had like, I mean, we wore like we had like Gavere on the back, and like big tank tops and the giant shorts. I don't know if you came that year. But we were like working at AT in the booth, like selling paddles to the dealers at the outdoor retailer. So we always wanted to have like a theme. And since we were kind of like not that stoked, because AT was always this core brand, and now they like totally sold out. Like it was like sold out to like the dark star, It's like back then, Perception, Confluence, they were like, I was like, not where you wanted to be, So we did the funeral home as like our theme that year. I don't know if you came that year, but we did. We dressed up like undertakers, and we had little coffins, and we had the paddles like in the coffins and everything, and we like had all the new paddles displayed, all the new AT2s, the new AT2 Flexi all carbon, like the dream paddle was the first, it debuted in a coffin. So that was like our joke, kind of, because they sold out. And the whole AT era was really, really cool. And it's kind of ironic that they just kind of put a nail in that coffin just in 2024.
Yeah, the crazy part about that AT, so whenever the new blade, the AT2, what was that, 95, 96 maybe, and 97?
It was about 96, I think 97 maybe.
So now we're almost 30 years later, right? You pick up that paddle, it's still pretty much as good as, there hasn't been any real improvement. I mean, there's little whatever, but that's still, I mean, when do you ever see that in any sport, in any piece of gear, that 30 years later, it's like a bit lighter, like there's nothing more you can do.
Yeah, for such a like important piece of gear in paddling, like some could say that the paddle is almost more important than the kayak, like at a certain point, like I look at the paddle like you look at your snowboard boots or your ski boots, like you can go anywhere and just rent some skis or whatever. But if you get the boots, like, and they suck, like you're just going to have a shitty day out skiing. Like it's not going to be that great. So you travel with your boots, and like the paddle I always felt like was the same way, because you're like touching it with your hands, and it's in your hands all day, and it's just like it's light, and it's just like your little baby, So, anyways, I've always felt like that about paddles, and just been into and I also thought that paddles are more technical, like I like that they were like composite and like they had like these cool angular shapes and they're made out of epoxy and just there was just so much more innovation. I thought like just to me that's just why I just always like to, you know, tweak out on paddles.
You're really depending on your gear too, right? I mean, maybe not quite base jumper level, but certainly a lot more than like a snowboard ski, right? Like if you think, if stuff goes wrong or just even that feels not right, right? And you're
Oh
doing
yeah.
this stuff is a big deal.
It was scary. Yeah. I mean, I had to answer the phones at AT for a couple years and I remember running into a few paddlers out on the water that were like, dude, I almost effing died because your paddle broke. Like I got a strip tore out of me many times by paddlers that were like, that fucking thing broke at the worst time. And I didn't do anything. I was just JPA. Now I can just be like, oh, are you JPA? They're like, what's that? And I was like, just paddling along. Like if I had a fucking dollar for every time I heard that, you know? So yeah, that was fun. Paddles are fun. And I still love tripping out on paddles. I talk to my best friend Taylor Robertson all the time about paddles, and it's really cool. Like Dane just did that new paddle for Warner. That thing looks sick. I'm like, Taylor, make me one like that for sup. Like I want one like that for sup. So I've been sup foiling a lot. So I've been like getting into paddles for that, 'cause the paddle's like a critical piece, you want it super light and got to have a big kind of blade at the tip, but little flats and right diameter. It's like a lot goes into those.
You subfoil in the ocean waves much?
Not much, here it's all downwinders. Yeah, here it's downwinders. So we do usually, 4 or 5 mile downwinder, do like 3 or 4 of those runs in a day. Super fun. Takes about 30, 40 minutes each run, depending on how much you cut back. If you just go straight downwind, you could do it in like 15, 20 minutes. But the regular 2 mile section here that we do it's awesome. You're going against the Columbia, the waves are overhead, and there's just, corduroy lines from Oregon to Washington all the way across the Columbia, which is like a mile wide. And so you're going, sideways to the wind on these swells, and the swells are slowly moving upstream against the current. So you have the wind at your back also pushing you. But when you're up on the foil, you're not really getting blown by the wind at all. You're riding actually just the slope of that swell with just the foil under the water. But you don't want the foil too deep because it doesn't feel the swell. So you got to be kind of near the surface. So it's a fun game. It's really technical. It's a very nuanced kind of surfing, and it's very obscure. It's fun, dude. It's freaking awesome. It's like low impact, and it's like right out the back door. I can, be out riding in 10 minutes. Yeah, and it's just amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's the magic carpet for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing a lot of that.
One thing on the sup thing did, it's been a while now, maybe 6, 8 years ago, but I'd taken a single sup down the Grand Canyon and it was whatever, right? You crash a lot. But then I took one of those giant sups, like the sup squatch,
Oh yeah,
and Scott Laguerre and I paddled it. And it was so funny.
nice.
I showed the put on, like, I gotta admit, man, I've never really actually taken this on Whitewater before. And he's like, oh shit, man. But the first rapid, it was so bomber. And we were just
Nice.
cheering after that. And that was the most fun craft. ever taken, I could imagine, on the Grand Canyon. It's just like skateboarding it with your buddy, right? And it's so stable, but so maneuverable, right? Because it's the size of a raft floor, but you can get anywhere. And the only thing we ended up having to do was, because we'd go through those big foam piles and we'd just float off, but you'd still be standing. So we would tie off to our life jacket quick release to the nose. So then
Nice.
you're kind of like Superman through that white and right back. But I can't believe that hasn't caught on S2ing. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah, it should. There is a little bit of it going on, but the Whitewater thing was definitely growing and catching on. I mean, you've been to the mountain games. We've been selling out the downriver stand-up paddle event, for almost 10 years now. And that was one of those events that I've been a part of for almost 30 years now too. And we were the first one to offer a cash prize for SUP Whitewater, and that event's still going. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So actually, I'm gonna race this year. I just got uh my board and I'm pretty stoked to race. Yeah, I'm gonna start training.
Nice. Well, I mean, that really created another golden period there when all
It
those
did.
Hawaiians all of a sudden started showing up in the mountains and like competing against kayakers, and
It
that was
did.
amazing.
Yeah, Nick, I almost got to relive my whitewater career in almost another dimension, for the last, I don't know, 15 years through the SUP industry, and it's really been a lot of fun, and I've gotten to see how the river community met the ocean community. It was really been interesting how there's been the cross pollination of SUP, which started in all the surf shops and started in the ocean because it came straight from surfing and a little bit from rescue life saving, like in the southern hemi, with paddleboarding at its roots. But then but then what happened was innovation brought out the Uli, the ultimate lightweight inflatable, also known as the inflatable sup. And the inflatable sup changed everything, dude. It like it went from cool surf to dude, you cannot touch a surf shop with an inflatable board. So then all of a sudden, all the reps are running around trying to sell inflatables to the surf shops. The surf shops are like, get the fuck out of here with that thing, dude. There's zero chance you're selling that here, And then the sup guys with their composite boards are going to the whitewater shops like, hey, I got this sup board. They're like, dude, that thing hit a rock and smashed into two pieces in 5 seconds, So then it was like, oh, cool. Now we have this whitewater raft technology, but with the SUP. And it is really interesting what happened. And one of the companies that epitomizes that whole thing was a company called C4, which started out as the C4 Waterman. That was really interesting. It started out just doing composite high performance SUPs for surfing in the oceans, like for Hawaiian guys. And then it finally ended up in the end selling, I think, to Winona as a strictly inflatable paddleboard company, which was pretty much only sold to kayak shops, in North America, not in North America, but around the world, but mostly inland and not along your coastlines. And then SUP went from being this really cool kind of surf sport, like Laird's cool, to all of a sudden no, Laird's lame and Sup's lame, and it's really dangerous in the waves. And then it just created more friction with the already just super intense surf crowd, if you will, to state it nicely. And then it kind of went to whitewater in some places where kayaking was really popular because you just get the natural crossover because you just had a whole bunch of kayakers they're sup curious. They're sup curious. They're like, sweet, I got this. I go paddle with my girlfriend or whatever. It's super chill. She doesn't have to learn how to roll. It's I can have fun on class 3. I don't need to go risk my life on class 5 on the weekend and shoot, now I got a family and all this other stuff going on. So like risking my life on the weekend probably isn't a part of my life anymore anyways. So like it was perfect, and like, but over the last few years, the industry just killed itself again with the race to the bottom. So, Amazon coming in, social media coming in, boatloads of garbage just being manufactured at pennies on the dollar, and just so easy to get a container of boards without doing anything but going. And then all of a sudden you got a brand. And then we just saw the inflatable paddleboard pretty much kill the sport. So, now like, I saw inflatable paddleboards the other day for like $79, like you can get like a 10-foot board for $79. So it's just like WTF, like my inflatable paddleboard's like $1,500. Like it's state of the art, pop up fin. Dude, the thing is freaking awesome. You
On that
know?
cross pollination era, actually, I've been paddling some with Charlie Muncie river surfing around here, and he was friends with Todd Bradley, right? Who had
Yeah.
the C4, and
He's
so
OG. Yeah.
kind of brought some of that around.
Yeah. Yeah. Bradley, I mean, he was huge instigator in bringing all those Hawaiians to the GoPro Mountain Games that year. And that was so cool to see all those folks come over and paddle. And Kai Lenny came, and we had some of the best paddlers in the world show up for the SUP events at the GoPro Mountain Games there. So yeah, come on over again. Come on, see if you can beat me. Come on, Kai, let's do it. I beat you last time. See if you can do it again.
Yeah,
Except for I got
definitely.
DQ'd. Yeah, I had my bib on inside out. Yeah, I could write a book on all the fun stuff I've done and events I've been to, Nick. It's been a lot of fun.
Definitely. Yeah, it is interesting though. Whitewater. I mean, they're still selling plenty of subs, but it's just whatever kind of garbage and hard to really get quality out there.
Yeah, it's there. It's just the proliferation of capitalization. I don't know what it is, just everyone's got to like start a brand and make a buck, and it's just like all of a sudden there's 1,000 brands and then no one's going anywhere, and then the truly core brands that have been doing it since the beginning, like an Uli or something like that, can't survive in that space. You can't make quality gear when you've got other stuff that costs so little that the general perception then just goes so far down that just it just is unobtainable then to entry level. So hopefully we can keep people getting into it. I mean, I still see SUPs at some of the whitewater shops, and for sure there's a lot of whitewater shops that have integrated stand-up paddle boards into their offerings, because it does offer a great activity, if not on whitewater, just out on flat water. I mean, it's amazing, you know, and hopefully we still see the sport grow, and people still get after it on the whitewater. I know I still paddle, like I'll go paddle like the middle wide, or sometimes I'll hop on the hood here. Those are solid class 3 runs, and people are mystified when they see me, just paddling down and catching any eddy, and not just swimming all over the place and just yard sailing right and left. So contrary to maybe some, for sure in the early days of SUP, we got a lot of naysayers. There was a lot of people calling it, I don't know, just paddleboard swimming or stand-up paddleboard swimming or whatever. But I think when people see paddlers like Charlie MacArthur, Mikey Tavares, there's a whole bunch of really good paddlers out there that do make it look really fun, and a bunch of women paddlers that are really good at it, and are really making it look good too. So that's a lot of fun. And I think it takes a little bit of the gnarly stuff in whitewater kayaking out of it, for sure. Having to learn how to roll in a kayak is a little tough for some folks. So the SUP does offer a little bit softer entry point to whitewater if that's your jam, because you can kneel, you can sit, or you can stand. If you wipe out, you just crawl back on the board. There's no roll involved, and so it's pretty chill. It's pretty chill on class 1 and 2 whitewater. Yeah, it's fun.
They're just fun everywhere, right? The SUP.
Yeah.
And my apologies to MacArthur for calling him Charlie Muncie.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, no, it's crazy. The one that I see about to blow up, right, is the river surfing. They built this wave in Salida 2 years ago, like Mike Harvey. I see Tavares there, but it's just unbelievable, and it's been the coolest scene to like be there right from the beginning, because there's no competitions,
Hmm.
nobody's sponsored, and it's just this scene where I've never seen it before because you have to stand right there, right? So everyone's
Yeah.
lining 5 feet from him, and it's the scene developed here where if you get the best ride for yourself, even if you're a beginner, whatever level you are, everyone's cheering for you, and it's just been
Yeah.
this positive, cool scene. And I'm sure any day now it's going to be competitions and people sponsored and all that, but it's been this beautiful moment for a few years.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think, seeing the whitewater parks, that proliferation of the whitewater parks in urban areas, especially. I mean, Reno is a killer example. Obviously, there's a whole bunch in Colorado, from Salida to Buena Vista, to Durango. But even places like, in the Midwest and stuff that are starting to do that. It's great because SUP fits into those. It slots right into those courses like super nice. So it's really fun to see. I know that Boise Park, SUP Whitewater made a pretty good presence there. And as far as like the standing waves, sometimes, seeing people on those SUP boards riding, I think influenced maybe some of those parks and installing a wave or something like that. So that's really cool, you know.
That's cool seeing, as you get older, I guess you see these sports go through their way, right? Like skateboarding up and then down and back up, skiing, until fat skis came out and all of a sudden. But I was interesting talking to Rush because, like,
Yeah,
you had been right there somehow coordinating these whitewater festivals, and they started maybe shifting their dates to make this rodeo tour. And then he was actually talked about getting calls from the festivals of like, "Hey, are you guys showing up?" And it's like, "No, we're we're doing this Whitewater Grand Prix or whatever,"
yeah,
And it was like that full cycle, right, of it like
yeah,
becoming a thing to dying.
yeah. I think it went, that's when the full send started to hit the scene, and it became a little bit more about sending than it did about just going and surfing, and I think that's where kayaking popularity definitely started to fall off. And that happened in like 2010, 2011, big time, when we went from cartwheels to waterfalls. And yeah, and then now, I mean, there's all kinds of things that probably affect it. I don't know what's going to happen now with everything going on in the world. Hopefully you've got a shed full of kayaks. But yeah, it's neat to see the evolution, and just like anything, it ebbs and flows. And it's always hard for me to understand when people are just like, yeah, it's just going to be like this forever. It's just like, it doesn't take a scientist to read the tea leaves and be like, man, it's pretty good right now. So, like, enjoy it while it lasts. Because as we know, all anything can come to an end, and boy, I just have been so lucky to see SUP go through its heyday. And and yeah, SUP introduced me to foiling. And I tried foiling, like gosh, I think it's been 10 years now since I built my first stand-up paddle foil board, and started foiling, and then got into wing foiling the first time I saw that, and probably have 10,000 hours into that too. And gosh, these sports that I see and they're so lucky to just catch my eye, and just it's always like something new, and I just want to be on it, and I just have this obsessive compulsive personality. And yeah, when I focus on something, I definitely want to live it, eat it, and breathe it. And sometimes it becomes my career, because I'm so plugged in. And then just, sometimes you create your own luck that way. And I've been really lucky a few times in doing that. I can't say it's really set me up for late in life, having like a whole bunch of money in the bank or some social security, nut that I can look forward to. But the amount of experiences and the fun I've had and the people I've met have made my life so fulfilling that I'm just really fortunate, and I'm really happy to be where I'm at and have some vitality and some health, and also to remember those who we have lost on the river. The Whitewater is a beautiful place, but it's also a dangerous place, and the river can be a mean motherfucker. It's like we got away with so much, Nick. Like, I can't imagine how many times I paddled over something that could have got me, and there's nothing that could have done about it, and it's just one of those things. So I'm just, whew, thanks to everyone who had my back. Thanks to Ed Lucero, who pulled me out from underneath a rock in the douse box. That was for sure the gnarliest of. I got pinned under a rock in a stubby in the douse box, and if it wasn't for Ed Lucero and another friend of his we were paddling with that day, um, her and him helped get me out of a pretty precarious situation. But other than that, I've been pretty lucky. Yeah, I've been pretty lucky. I haven't had any massive injuries, but I definitely have a sore back from kayaking, and a lot of hurt feelings.
Yeah, the lifelong search for the G's, right? If that always makes the day better. The whitewater's so crazy, yeah, because you're not in control like you are in other sports, right? I mean, you really have to relent a
Mm,
lot more, right? A mountain bike, like you can always just not hit the jump, pull
yeah,
off, or ski and snowboard, and you can stop. Kayaking, you just enter, you have to just
there's no
let
breaks.
go.
There's no breaks. Like I tell people, like that's the big difference about whitewater is like once you hit the current, there's just no breaks. And knowing that there's no breaks, you only have two options. One is to try to break, which is going to end in a freaking disaster. Like backpedaling off the lip of a waterfall is probably not a great idea, but you're going to go off that waterfall no matter what. So why don't you just focus, put your mind on your money, and just nail it, just like do your best to go off that thing in control and do exactly what you need to do. And I love that committed part of whitewater, like the point of no return at the lip of any rapid, whether it's class 1 or class 5, is just so sick when you're just like, I am just fucking committed. Like, just there's just nothing you can do but just do your absolute best in that moment. And if you just totally pimp it or you just totally crash, it doesn't matter. You had that moment to commit, and just it's awesome. And no other sport has that, like zero. So it's
A
been
moment when your mind just is as clear as could be, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just as pure and focused on the moment as, which is what all that search for the G's sort of is about, right? Because
It
when you're
is.
getting those G's, your mind is just on your moment.
And it's a time warp, dude. It's a time warp. Like time in that moment gets to stand still for a second and it's just there for you, and it's only yours and you just I mean, yeah, sure, you could like record it on your GoPro, but you still no one's ever gonna feel that moment. Like you can't film a feeling. That tactile experience that you get from Whitewater is like awesome. It's just nothing in life like it. So it's like you got to be careful. It's addicting. It's probably like a really bad drug addict or habit or pill or whatever. Like, God, I am so lucky with my addictive personality that I did not get drugged down a bad place like that because it could have so easily happened for me. And thank God, kind of cycling back as we hit 2 hours here. We're almost an hour and a half, whatever. you know, I was just lucky that my dad kind of forced me to get out in nature and not just ride my skateboard every day and run around in the city with some probably not best influences in my life at that point when I was a young teenage boy. Thank you, Dad, for like making me put the skateboard in the canoe, even though I wasn't gonna ride it, like we were going camping, So it's neat, and I think that whole part of kayaking is very special, is it's not an indoor activity. It's something you have to do outside. So no matter what, you have to deal with the weather. You can't change that. You can't change time and you can't change current. So wherever the river goes, you're going too. So I just, it's, to me, the river is like time, as like the weather. It's just something you can't change. So you just gotta, you know, go with the flow. It's just such a saying that is so true, and it can be such a, you know, way to live your life too, that can actually make your life a lot better, and not sweat all the little small things. It's like when you're going down through a rapid and you've got that one marker wave or that one marker rock. That's your full focus, and the tree whizzing by your head and the rocks flying by underneath you that are jagged, sharp, and oh, there's a killer hole on the left. Like, doesn't matter. You're just like, yeah, it's that sweet focus that you get, and everything else kind of. And sometimes events give that to me. I think that's why I liked competing sometimes. It's just being able to focus and kind of shut off all the noise and just be in that moment. Yeah, cool stuff.
It's a higher power. Maybe that all the search for the nature G's, right? It's kind of the big part of it. You're always feeling this higher power of the river, the mountains, the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, that's where I get my wealth. That's where I get my my personal, mm, it's what fills me up. It's just those moments where um yeah, you just feel that. It's hard to explain. And if you haven't kayaked, you should get out there and try it. If you haven't stand a paddleboard down some white water, a little bit on the river, just cruising around, try it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is for sure. Yeah, it's interesting talking about Whitewater having that focus, keeping you out of trouble. Reminds me of like that Willie Curran in one of those really early Lindgren movies, talking about all his friends kind of got in trouble. He doesn't see him anymore, and he's like, I don't know where I'd be without kayaking.
Oh, I mean, a lot of my friends, I believe that kayaking attracted a certain type of person to it as well. And that made it even more fun because kayakers are a tribe. Like you meet kayakers still. Like I meet people on the I usually paddle alone. Like I usually go to the put in alone and just paddle with whoever I meet up with. And it is so fun. And it's just instant tribe. It's like, oh cool, you're doing lower, so sweet. Can I just yeah, just leave your car, you just jump in with us. Oh cool. Like your board blows up, you have to strap it on. Like, no, I just like roll it up and throw it in the trunk. Like, oh sweet. Like I can get a ride with anybody. And yeah, it's great, and it's just I love that about the Whitewater community. It's that just instant tribe, like these are my people. And a lot of times I don't have to get to know them because they're already just like me. You know? Like like when I met you, we're like, dude, bro, like we're really similar. Like we don't have to like talk about 4 hours about how we have all this shit in common. We just know. So that's kind of like when you connect with a tribe like that, or like a group of people, or that community, it's cool. Feels good. And I always got that from Whitewater.
And I guess that's one kind of benefit of it staying the size it has, right? It really is that perfect size for
It's
where
true.
everyone's part of the tribe. And almost when it got bigger, it started to get out of that, right? It started to be a little bit like that was one side effect of the golden era. Maybe it was like,
It's
oh,
true.
it's cool, you're not cool. But then as it settled back, now it's just totally everyone's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think looking back at it, there were definitely some hard times too when like we were like at the pinnacle of kayaking and you were like had that target on your back and everyone was gunning to like dethrone you, or like in the competition side of things, that can be a hard place to be, and it gets even more hard when it is your tribe and they are your bros and your sisters and like people you really love, and yeah, sure, we talk some trash, but at the end of the day, we want to win. You want to win. And you want to see your friends do good, like their best, but you still want to kick their ass, like I would tell people all the time, I want to see you do your best, but I still want to do better, But that's just competitor in me, and I just love that because it also made us all such better kayakers. Like we would go do these hard runs during the week because we got so much better in the competitions. Like the competition made us like really rad kayakers. And then kayaking really hard, really rad stuff made us good competition kayakers too. So that was fun. But that whole rodeo and competing and racing and all that stuff, because it wasn't all just freestyle too. Like I always raced. I always loved the races. I always did the slalom. I always like when I went, I wanted to paddle every event. That was like big for me. I never wanted to be known as like a specialist. I always did the slalom. I always paddled the slalom. I'd hit all the gates. I don't care. Like do a couple stern squirts and just still have fun. And and I love the downriver races too. But I wasn't always like a specialist. And and kayaking was like a nature loving thing too. So for a lot of people, it just wasn't. Competition wasn't like their thing. And sometimes I felt like I missed out sometimes on those Grand Canyon trips and those cool opportunities because I was chasing that. I was chasing the kayak dollar, I was chasing that for a while. Admittedly, like I was like, yeah, I need to make some money so that I can kayak more, but I was still like trying to make money. So, there were opportunities that sometimes I wish I had those opportunities back then, and for sure I have a lot of um regrets about my career and like a ton of decisions and different things that I could have done a lot better as far as competing and training and being in better shape and all that stuff, and maybe not having so much fun at night. But you know it was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy to be where I'm at.
It's funny how when the mind thinks of the past, right, it's almost always regret, right? Because that's what trains you to be better. It's rare that you think of the past and like celebrate your successes, right? Your mind's always like, oh, you could have done this better. You could have said that
Yeah.
differently. It's funny, but it's what makes you better, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably the human mind is just designed to be that way so that we just constantly reinvent ourselves, and figure out ways to hopefully enjoy life better, enjoy life more. So yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on, Nick. Like it's been awesome. Like just thinking back, just there's just so much that happened back then, and I wish I could remember every minute of it because it was just amazing, and it was literally spanned almost 2 decades. So yeah, it's been really special.
Yeah, it was definitely a pleasure, brother. And I hope now with these events like there in Hood River, I almost feel like the Little White Race is kind of what's left to really build off of now that the North Fork's gone, the
It's true.
one in Betts Valley is gone. It's almost feel like obviously you're the announcer since you've announced more than you can count, but that feels like that's about the place that's about the only event that is, and everyone's there, you have
Yeah.
such a robust community in Hood River, just such an amazing community of whitewater people. It would be cool to see that event somehow blow out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's a tough spot to get to. I mean, that is just one amazingly gnarly piece of whitewater. And just there's no spectating there. So it's gonna have to all be virtual. And that's pretty amazing. We can do that now with all the cameras and everything. And I mean literally now to be a pro kayaker, um, and it's the same back when I built my career, is you have to become a professional video person. Like you pretty much, if you want to be a professional athlete these days, you either have to hire someone to follow you around with a video camera and edit and do that, or you have to figure out how to do it yourself. And that was just something that I stumbled onto early in my career. And thank goodness for people like Craig Kelly and other snowboarding stars that kind of like gave me the blueprint because I was literally watching those old videos on VHS at my shop. And that's how I like stamped my way into the career I had. So yeah, it was awesome.
Well, that's a great point, right? For how much the whole media landscape has changed from that VHS you handed us to today, it's still just
Same.
about someone documenting it, These people like Jamie O'Brien who like took that leap so long ago to get someone to follow him around and
That's
take
right.
video. That should be inspiring to anyone these days who's young and wants to make it happen. It's just about
Yeah.
putting out content.
I mean, look at what Sickos did. I mean, you talked about them before. Like, I know those guys live right here, right up the street, and they saw the blueprint and they're killing it. It's awesome. Yeah, I love watching that stuff. Those sends they do on the inflatable kayak off the big jumps and the powder, so good.
Mm. Yeah,
But
right on. You have people can go with you there in Hood River. Can people like book a tour with
absolutely.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I have my website, dangavere.com, and columbiagorgefoiling.com is where to go. Yeah. And come on out.
I
Yeah,
want
I
to
can
do
get you out on
that.
the water, wing foiling or whitewater paddling down the river. And yeah, it'd be great to have anyone out. But it's really been a pleasure being on the pod, and I appreciate you having me on, Nick.
All right, brother. You take care.
You too. Have a good night.
Later.